Well, it's the Sunday show, and it's my pleasure to introduce my co-hosts who were giving me a bit of grief in the green room. One had to get up early to be live, and the other one had to rush home quickly after work and not have a shower, not have anything to eat to join us, to be on time. You know, look at the hard work and did it. Who said that running
one is which?
and being part of a YouTube show is an easy life?
Yes, I want to know which one is which.
We wouldn't do it if we didn't love it, Andrew.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Hey guys, before we get into the chat, I need to do a shout out to a guy called Mark Sutcliffe from My Blues Guitar. I've put a link to his channel in the chat and on the description, and I have put a link to Brad's webpage. So I will go back and I will add Brad's webpage link to the descriptions on the shows that we've done. So forgive me, Brad, for not doing that. We mentioned it in the chat, but we need to put that on the description, you know, so that at least you're going to get some kind of hits or generate some kind of movement on your social media. But if you guys can check Mark out, I've been talking to Mark on social media for a long time, asking him to join us live because this guy is a Clapton nut. He's a blues breaker nut. If you guys check his lessons out, the depth that this guy goes to, it's just unbelievable. He's an Englishman, of course, and he just recently, his mum passed away just recently. So again, our condolences to you, Mark.
Yeah. And Brad, I understand you have merch. You have merchandise.
I do. I've got a bunch of T-shirts I'm sporting. I thought I'd just wear the sample I've got. It's a blue one. So at the moment, I'm just going through and picking some colours. Probably have 3 colours and a black available. So the biggest favourite has been the blue. Apparently, that's why I'm wearing it today. So,
and
blue looks good.
How do we buy them from your website, or do you have a Teespring type thing? Or
look, there's links on the website there, just to the store basically. So
awesome.
On my Facebook as well and Instagram as well. So just click on it.
Am I correct though in assuming though that your website has all the links to your social media? Is that correct?
Has everything.
Yeah. So that's probably so. Again, there's his website there. So we do appreciate Brad sponsoring the Sunday show as well. So makes it sound good, doesn't it?
Sponsoring.
Sponsored by Brad Cook. Yeah, look, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, anyone that's watching this replay, rerun, or lurking in the background there, we would really appreciate you subscribing to the channel. We do thank the people that have subscribed over the last couple of days. We've picked up a couple of subs, so it's always good. And we look forward to doing more shows, because whether or not we get the subs, we're still going to continue. So that's good. The topic of this week's show is one that Simon and I, Brad, we've done a few shows on this album. We haven't gone through, obviously, the songs, but we've spoken about the album in the context of what was happening in 65, 66, 67, in the context of Clapton's career as a stepping stone as he progressed. And we also had Ramon on, didn't we? When was Ramon on, Simon?
Way back.
A year ago?
Yes, actually, last autumn, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think at least a year ago, because he did this wonderful video on the amp on the holy amp, which is the Blues Breaker. And if anybody wants a cop, I've managed to get the article that he talks about. So I've got this in PDF form. So if anybody wants this article, it's the one that everyone talks about that has all the information about why that amp is a special amp. So I've got that. So you want a copy? I'll email you a copy. If anyone else wants it, just flick me.
That particular amp.
I'll have one.
I mean, not just the make, but that particular Eric's amp.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of and what's really interesting too about, so obviously we're doing the Beano album. So what's really interesting about the deep diving, and this is one of the things that we like about the show that we do, is that we try and bring all these different theories. So you're going to hear or read articles where people talk about him using a 4x12 combo, and then someone else says that he was using a 4x12, a 4x10, and that he wanted, a 2x12 to fit into the boot of his car, but he wasn't driving at that time. He didn't have a car.
That's not true, is it? Sadly, it's a great story.
No.
Is it? Oh, yeah. I think I've only recently realised that that's not true.
He just wanted that
story.
Because it sounded different when he went into Jim Marshall's shop. It just sounded different from everything else he was using. So that was the amp that he took into the studio. So anyway, what's the album we're doing?
Had he used it live before they went in the studio, Andrew? I presume he toured with it with, they'd been because there's that, I don't know if this is another apocryphal story, that he went on tour with that amp and the Les Paul. And every town he went to, all the blues guitarists, after they'd seen him, went out and bought Les Pauls and Marshalls to kind of emulate.
Well, that's why this album is so important, because it set that benchmark, didn't it? We just did Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin last week, and he was blown over by that tone when he was recording them early on, when he was involved in a lot of gig studio work. He was blown away by that tone. So important. Simon, do you want to do a quick shout out to everyone that's in the chat before we get into please?
Sorry. Sonia's already been tilting off at me. She's gonna watch it. So good morning to Sonia. Sonia, I hope you're good. I hope you're all right. Things are going
awesome,
okay.
Sonia.
Yeah. And Arvin as well. Good morning, Arvin. Hope you're good too. And Ellen Vorishine as well. Good morning, Ellen. Thanks for joining. Very cool. Becoming a regular. That's worrying. Yes, awesome. That's all we've got right now. Although we do have apparently 7 people watching. I don't know whether we're 3 of them though.
The videos are getting good views though.
Yeah,
people like it.
Yeah. And we get some good comments there, and that's always a pleasing thing, because I'm going to keep saying it. It's just about 3 guitar nerds hanging out, from different parts of the world, talking about stuff that they love. And obviously we've got some people that follow us and contribute to the chat, and that's humbling. We really, really appreciate that. And then Brad and Simon and I do talk about that, and we love it. Thank you for making the hour or 2 or 3 hours that we spend together even more interesting.
1 hour, 3 hours.
Yeah. Always.
Okay, so this album 66 came out 66, just celebrated its 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. Classic album. I'm not going to say a lot about it, because I'm sure that you guys will talk about the album as we talk about some of the songs. But from a guitar playing point of view, it's a landmark. And I think, if we're going to be honest, when we go through some of the songs, it's not an album, in my opinion, that is a masterpiece in the sense of song craftsmanship. One of the things that we were talking about last night, for example. But if you're a guitar player and you're looking for the beginning of that rock and roll, that rock tone, that's why this album's important. Would you guys agree or disagree with that little statement?
Totally agree.
Agree. I totally agree as well. I think there's a lot of intent behind this album that that we can talk about.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
holding our cards close to our chest. I mean, no, it's too much before we started.
I mean, it's like a bit of a textbook for like a starting point for blues guitarists.
Yeah.
Write a guitarist into the right direction. They from a starting point. We'll get into the songs obviously, but the playing, the tone, the licks, they're very textbook Clapton licks in this record. So yeah, it's a definite more guitar orientated like starting point for blues rock. Without a doubt.
Yeah. And I just want to give one little disclaimer here. I am very, very respectful of John Mayall. I tip my hat to that guy because he is one of the founding fathers of the British blues music movement. He has an ear and an eye for talent. His band is responsible for so many guitarists, bass players and drummers developing their careers. So when I'm going to be talking about some of the songs on the album, I'm not being disrespectful to John Mayall at all. I pay homage to him. But the whole idea with this format that we're doing is we're going through and we're ranking the tracks and we're playing skip and play. That's the idea, and we always want to try and be honest, don't we? So the first track, guys, on the album is All Your Love. So I've made a note here. So Eric gets his Otis Rush groove going, and Otis Rush was an important figure for Eric at that time. It was that modern Chicago sound that Eric was in love with, and he was replicating through his playing live and obviously on this record. It's a reference I think, to the homework that he was doing with John Mayall, going through John Mayall's record collection. That was his degree, his bachelor's degree in blues music. I'm sure he was listening to music and playing it, and I think that's the key. And Simon's mentioned that before too, that these guys were listening to music. Sometimes we forget that. We just think that Eric Clapton jumped out of a box and he was playing the guitar. And apparently it was a very, very popular live song that they did for a while too. So I'm not going to say much about it. I'm going to pass it on to you, Simon. If you want to add something. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. I love the song. I love it. You can hear exactly what's happening with that band and the amplifier and the guitar. It just makes the statement. And 9 out of 10 for me. Never a skip.
No, it really sets the tone of the album, isn't it? What the album is going to be. And clearly it's going to be a showcase for Eric in many ways. And that guitar and that tone and what they're setting out to do. And we know that the way they set up in the studio with having the microphone a long way from the amp and recording it like that, turning it up loud. Interesting. I was doing this yesterday. Everyone went out of the house. I was alone. Surprised me. Done that very often. So I was able to what I did was I put the album through my stereo, right, and I turned my stereo up to 8. And I can tell you, if I turn my stereo up to 8, the house shakes. And then I got my Les Paul, my Chapman Les Paul out, turned my amp up to 10, it goes to 12, and add a little go. And my God, if you turn the tone off a bit and give it. Like, I wasn't getting. I mean, I have a PV Delta Blues, which is based on a basement. So everything's based on a basement, But you go, do you know what? I'm starting to understand how to get that sound, by turning the amp up to 10. Sorry, neighbours, and really, and just going for it, And it was amazing, really. And you thought, all right, I'm getting some idea in the ballpark that's what they were going for, and that's how it works. And also, could I say, cranking the album up really helped me to sort of really get into it in a way that I didn't do, particularly when I was just listening to my iPad. It's interesting that this album, not against other albums, that most of the other albums we do, I've listened to on my iPad on our headphones and stuff, and that's fine. It works really well. Like Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti sounds fantastic on my headphones. This doesn't really sound that great on my headphones. It sounds great if you put it in your stereo and turn it up to 8 and let it fly. Suddenly, all the dynamics. And then you realize that by putting it on my stereo and turning it up to 8, what I'm doing is replicating it being played live, which is, of course, what they're recording. And it made a huge difference to it, actually. Because suddenly all the things like on this track, the keyboard stabs and all that kind of gear that are quite in the background if you listen to on your headphones, suddenly you understand how the mix is working and where they are in it, and suddenly they are in the right place where you think that's where they should be, and that's where the organ sound should be. John Moses, and you get the idea that's I presume they were into cranking it up loud to mix it and mixing it like it was loud, should have, I don't know if it's got on the back, play loud or something. But it absolutely makes a huge difference. I urge anybody who's got this, if you can, to put it on some sort of stereo and really put the volume up, because only then did I really start to get the dynamics of it as a record and as a statement, really, in a way that I hadn't on these, and these are fine for a lot of music. They absolutely work, really well, but not for something that was recorded 55 years ago. And, in very much as we know, kind of, the production is with the guitar player, and, you don't do much post-production. What you get on tape is what you're going to get, pretty much. It's not adding all the effects and reamping and all of that stuff. It's too early for all of that. So you've got, so that is kind of what I sort of went through with this, and it was fantastic to crank it up to 8, and because as I say, I got a real sense of what the album was like in a way that I hadn't on headphones. So I hope that this opening track just sounds amazing if you turn it up to 8. If you've got the chance to crank it up without killing off the neighbours. Eric, absolutely, all those swoops and that really kind of attacking tone and attacking, he's a young man full of piss and vinegar, and lots of kind of, I think, lots of issues to work out via his guitar. And you can hear
that arpeggio section that he does on that song just indicates very clearly how loud that amp is. If you've got no idea, I think that clearly tells you, because that feedback that he's getting, and obviously where the amp is situated in relationship to the mic, and I'm sure we all know that, because it was the first time a rock album was recorded with the mic far away, across the room, halfway across the room, as opposed to right up next to the cone. Ballsy and interesting, and certainly hats off to John Mayall for turning around saying to Vernon and all the guys at Decca, do what he tells you to do.
Gus Dudgeon, the engineer, who obviously produced all the Elton John stuff in the early 70s. So I mean, I agree, Andrew. I think it's a real statement. I think it does what it set out to do. It says this is the sound. This is what we're trying to go for. I love the sort of change bit in the middle where they kind of do, that I don't know if I kind of it stays. It does it do 2/4 from 4/4 to 2/4, that kind of thing. That dun, 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 where he goes, the drums quicken, and that's kind of. Could I say there's one or two Bob Dylan tracks that do that as well. They do that kind of lazy bit, and then it's like sit up straight and come along now, and you sort of get on with it. Goes off, which I really like, and I like that sort of dynamic change as well. That I thought was really good. Yeah, and as I say, the other thing that got lost on the headphones was really the bass playing, which when I put it on my stereo, really got a sense of the bass playing and stuff, which is really good. Rhythm section, really making it. But as I say, that they came out a lot more when I played it on my stereo than they did when I played it on my headphones. So apologies to Mr. McVie and Mr. Flint for underestimating their contributions for a bit. I won't do it again. So it's an 8 for me. Never a skip. Really good opening track.
Awesome.
For me, listening to this album is pretty refreshing because it's been a while since I've actually listened to it. To actually listen to it the few times over the last few weeks that I have, it really highlighted to me, obviously, Eric's signature licks all over this album. The stuff he does even now today, he's still repeating a lot of those licks. Staples for him, and I said it just before in the opening that I think this album in itself is a textbook for up-and-coming blues rock guitar players. It's flooded with guitar licks that you can go sit there and play along with and just try and nail those vibratos and those bends. So it's a great album in that sense. You can sit with the guitar and actually start playing along to it. Obviously, Clapton's a hard person to nail his feel and stuff, but you can really just sit there and have fun and practice along with this album, which I love that. I just want to say that before I start talking about the opening track, which is All Your Love. It's an Otis Rush number, as you mentioned, Andrew. I reckon it's a really great opening track for the record. It really sets the mood. It's got like a cruisy swagger. Got some really interesting guitar overdubs during the well. They actually, I had to listen to it a few times to really pick out that it wasn't reverse guitar. I thought it was reverse guitar. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's Eric just playing licks there. Ultimately, the first thing that sticks out to me being a guitar player and a Les Paul buff, the Les Paul rich tone that he pulls out of that Les Paul Marshall, the Blues Breaker. I mean, it's, it set the tone for up-and-coming guitarists. I mean, we talk about Peter Green, and Gary Moore. Everyone went through this tone in the blues rock thing. If they were playing a Les Paul, they were playing and trying to achieve this tone. So, obviously, great playing from the rest of the band, like really nice playing. The really nice Hammond playing. I thought that was a good highlight for this song. But I don't want to undermine the other players, but this showcases Eric Clapton, his filings, and it spawned, a generation of guitarists that were trying to obviously, emulate Clapton and his tone. I gave it a 10 out of 10. In the context of the record, I think it's one of the highlights. Obviously, the first, there's a few on here that are really Clapton-ized songs. Obviously, he came from the Yardbirds into this project, and this is where he went into Cream. So I can actually hear, especially in this song, some of the Creamish stuff that he did in this song in particular, and one or two of the others as well. So enough of me waffling on, but I give it a 10 out of 10, and it's definitely play for me.
Okay, so we're on 9, and yours is a 9 as well, Simon?
Yeah. I think
9. Okay, so we're on par, and right, I thought about giving it a 10. To be fair, but I'm happy with the 9. So the second song is it's an epic song. It's Hideaway. Oh yeah, sorry, of course. Yeah, the second song for anyone who's not familiar with the second song on the album is Hideaway. So it's an epic song. You've got that Les Paul again cranked, the hammered organ on this song is beautiful. I love it. It's a highlight of the album, in my opinion. One of the highlights. It's a song that Eric took from another early influence, Freddie King. So he's not afraid to take these early blues guys in the Chicago scene and from Texas and incorporate their kind of playing into his style. And I take my hat off to these British guys for doing that. We saw it with Jimmy Page, didn't we? Being heavily influenced and it just oozing out through him. And you get this strong impression too when you listen to this song. If you guys haven't checked out the original, check it out because they are very different. Very different. And there's other versions that came later on that some of my co-hosts might mention. And again, that's very different too. But it sets the benchmark for, I think, that instrumental rock genre that was going to come along. I love the song. I can't play it. I've been trying to play it for 20 years. I can play bits of it. But one day I might be able to play the whole song all the way through. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, and it's never a skip.
No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Freddie King's one of Eric's great heroes, isn't it? So I think that you're right, Andrew. That putting this on second, clearly, again, no vocals. So you are showcasing what Eric can do with the tone, and also that and it's got some. For me, it's got 4 or 5 different parts to it. And he uses a slightly different tone on each of the parts, a slightly different way of playing it and stuff, and which I think really showcases, in one song, what he can do with a Marshall and a Les Paul, flicking between the pickups and just taking it off a bit and doing other things. So it's
doing all that live, Simon.
Absolutely.
Not edited.
Yeah, not edited.
Yeah.
No, doing it all live and being able to play, as you say, the difficult playing through the whole thing. I'm sure Brad could play it. I can't play it either, but it's aspirational for you and I, Andrew.
Aspirational, yes.
Yeah, we have an aspiration one day to play it. I mean, I think it's an amazing, full of live. It's full of that kind of young Eric Clapton of aggressive energy. Pulling it out and saying, I'm stepping it up, boys. The blues just got stepped up, right up. Into what we can do with it, and my interpretation of it, and this is the tone I'm going to use. This is where I'm going with it. Obviously, different to Freddie King's, but yes, for me, a 10 completely, because I think that this is one of those songs where if you wanted to say one song that influenced a whole generation of British blues players in 3 minutes 15 seconds, that's what you play, don't you? That's the one, because it's got all those different elements to it. and and he's allowed to just play, get on with it. Yeah. Brad, just going back to your point earlier, I was interested that when I turned it up a bit, there were definitely some tracks that have more than one guitar on them, don't they? They definitely had 2 guitars, overdubs, doing basic rhythm guitar and then doing obviously the blasting bit over the top kind of thing, which it hadn't, So I mean, obviously they did the majority of it live, but yeah, they obviously went back and did some other stuff, which was interesting because I hadn't really picked up on that when I listened. Until I started playing it really loud, and then it was clear that Eric was doing more than one guitar player's bit. But so, as I say, for me, a 10, never a skip, and really, as I say, from my point of view, if you want to play one Eric Clapton song from this era that says this defined the generation of British blues players and what you can do with a Marshall and a Gibson in 3 minutes, that's your track. Yeah,
that's a good way to end your wrap up of that one. Well, By the way, Freddie King song. We all know Clapton absolutely loved Freddie King. You can hear it even in his vocal approach later on when he starts singing and he's fronting his own act. And even when he, like, even on From the Cradle, on some of the tracks there, like I think there's some Poor, things like that, and you can really hear his vocal approach is very Freddie King as well. So it's not just a guitar influence, as his influence, Freddie King's influence on him was massive. So that being said, the song is just a really attitude. There's a slight bit more aggression in the playing than Freddie King, but in the way he plays it, like you said, Andrew, they're completely sort of different versions of the same song. The way he plays it in a different position to Freddie King, in a box pentatonic.
Does he?
And he gives it. He's got his young Clapton godlike approach to guitar, and that was evident in this track. To Powerhouse of Blues instrumental. I really love when he hits that bridge pickup, say 2 minutes 5 seconds into the song. That's a really big moment in the song for me. That tone he gets on that bridge pickup, man, it's for me it's goosebumpy sort of material, and I give it 10 out of 10. Definitely one of the highlights on the record, and if you're only going to listen to one track off this record, that's the one.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
It's an interesting point that you talk about the Brit. Sorry.
No, go on, Karen.
It's interesting that you mentioned the bridge pickup, Brad, because in Clapton's biography, he doesn't talk much about the gear or the techniques that he uses or used during the periods of his career, but he gives us a bit of information in his biography. He said, "What I would do is use the bridge pickup with all of the bass turned up, so the sound was very thick and on the edge of distortion. I always used the amps that would overload." Now, this is what he's talking about, not during Cream, but this is what he was talking about when he was recording this album in that 3-day period back in April. So a lot of guys apparently weren't using the bass on that bridge pickup turned up. They would keep it on basically on zero, but that only works apparently in the research that I've done with my amp and my Les Paul when the amp is turned up loud. When you've got that amp on 3 or 4 and you turn the bass up, it gets really, really muddy. But when you when you've got the amp pumping, as you guys know, being guitar players, you got to have the volume, and then that's when it works. So, yeah, interesting. It must have been loud in that studio, eh? It must have been loud.
Hear the volume of the amp, and as you know, Andrew, so you would probably understand the volume that you would have to get to pull that tone with just a Les Paul plugged straight into it. So that in itself. They went for a sound. They let Clapton go. Obviously, he was very restricted previous to this, so it was like his breathing space. He wanted to prove what he could do. He proved a really big point. I mean, we're all sort of chasing that tone. For some reason, sound guys are always scared of volume when it comes to playing live. They don't want you to play too loud, but an amp like that really is designed to be played loud to get the best out. It's you talk about motor cars, like a V8 motor car. If you're driving around the streets idling all the time and it's coughing and spluttering, it's going to chew lots of petrol and it's not going to really perform. But when you put the foot down, that's when the baby moves, and it sounds smooth and the engine sounds amazing, and it's got the power there. And that's the same with an amplifier. I relate the two. If you're cranked that amp, every frequency that's there at a low volume completely changes. So you're saying the bottom end is soft. But then when you drive your amps, your valves are driving so much harder, your speaker cone starts to react a different way as well. So if any sound guys are out there listening, never give guitarists a hard time when they want to.
Yeah. No, but it's really
It's not because we're deaf. It's because we want our tone right.
Done. I mean, I think that's really interesting that when you crank it up, that it clarifies the bottom end and tightens it up and kind of, and you think, does that work? Obviously, Jim Marshall's a smart bloke and, realize that's what you do. And of course, back in 60, if you're touring in 65, 66, I guess you're not putting stuff through the PAs, which will be just vocals,
Yep.
And therefore you've got to make a really big sound with an amp on a stage, and there's not what we have now, which is, out the front sound and that's really the mix that the audience gets is, what you get through the PA and you put your band through the PA, whatever it is, they're, from the pictures I've seen, and I've talked about this a bit, that, they are very thin kind of, there's very thin PA speakers that are just for vocals. So none of the instrumentation is going through the vocals. Therefore, you've got to fill up the sound, haven't you? And that means you've got to crank up your amp, play it loud, because that's the way of getting. It's interesting, isn't it? That clearly when they played live, unless Huey Flint is, I don't get the impression he's like Mr. Heavyfoot, but he must have had to work hard to keep up with that, wasn't he? If you're doing a live mix, with keyboards and bass drums, and the drums are not mic'd, which I presume he wasn't in 65, 66. I presume they're going out and getting, he's not, but they're not micing the drum kit up. That he's gonna have to go some, isn't he, to keep up with that? Because that's loud, for a drummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't find any information
maybe Eric
on that.
didn't care.
We've got a new guy in the chat, Metal Rocker. Thank you for joining us, Metal Rocker.
Welcome, Metal Rocker. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. It's always nice to see a new face in the chat joining Brad and Simon and I. Right, yeah. The next song is Little Girl. Now, we've got the first John Mayall song, a standard, blues composition, singing about what bluesmen love talking about, sad times, girls and booze, not necessarily in that order. I love the song. Yeah. 18 years of pain, diddle it. I'm not going to make fun of John's vocals, but I have in the past on this show. I think Simon and I had Carl on, and I think Carl was taking a crack at John Mayall's vocals, and it's an acquired taste, John Mayall's vocals, and I think for most of us over the years we kind of get over that. But I have had people make comment to me when I've asked them to listen to this album and going, oh gosh, those vocals are a bit harsh, so. But look, I love the song. It's 8 out of 10. One of the great things about this song, Simon, it's interesting that you were listening to it through your stereo system. If you listen to this song through your headphones, it's really interesting because on the left channel you can hear Clapton's guitar really clear. And I just want to harp back to what Brad was saying earlier. It's a classic example of what a blues guitarist wants to achieve. It's a lesson. You can listen to that on that left channel and you can hear what you should be trying to sound like. And also the vibrato. This is where I think the vibrato, if it wasn't clear in the other two numbers, it's come clear on this song. So it's not a skip. It's not a skip, guys. 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Yeah. It's I think that actually I'm all right with idiosyncratic. Anybody who likes Bob Dylan is not afraid of idiosyncratic vocals. Could I just say, that you get over that? And I love people like Tom Waits and stuff like that. It's I didn't feel, that's the way he sings and that's what he does, and I think that I didn't feel uncomfortable about that. I just, I didn't really notice that, he sings quite high and he hasn't got the strongest vocal in the world, but actually, at some point that's what you're doing. That's where you're, that's where you are. Somebody's got to sing, And clearly Eric's not, not really into the singing yet and doing all of that. And therefore, somebody's got to do it. So I think he does fine. As I say, I think I'm not afraid of an idiosyncratic vocalist by a distance. That doesn't affect my enjoyment of the music. And it for me pretty much sings in tune. Hits all the notes he wants, and doesn't. He doesn't seem to go. And I think this is good. He keeps within what he can do as a vocalist. And I think for me, that's the important bit, is that, you don't do stuff that you can't do or just sounds terrible. Yeah. What he sings pretty much in tune and it sounds fine to me. So I'm not, it's a bit idiosyncratic, but I don't really care. And I think it's I don't think it detracts from what the tracks are really at all, stuff. But, yeah, I really like this track. It's it's got a sweet little riff to start with, and some proper rolling 12-bar blues. And kind of, I love the fact that it speeds up at about 1.5 minutes in. There's a definite speed up. I don't know who promoted that, but somebody did. I'm blaming Huey Flint, the drummer, for speeding up, which I to be honest, I like that sort of thing, because for me, it gives it a real human quality, and kind of, where people are, and and you feel the excitement of somebody. Somebody's excited to play and starts to speed up, not too much, but you feel that excitement, and you feel that thing. I agree about the vibrato. It's really interesting, and Eric's over in that left-hand speaker, obviously mixing it, panning them out, and yeah. So for me, it's an 8 and never a skip. I think that also it's track 3. You've got to do something a bit different, haven't you? You've had 2 kind of showcase tracks. You've got to do something a little bit different. Otherwise, it's just, otherwise it just becomes a single sound. And I think, one of the things we ought to say that, in the 60s, these albums, is that not all the songs sound the same by a distance, and I think that's a thing, isn't it? That they didn't do very much, one sound, one thing. I know Eric's got one sound and that's a showcase for it, but around it, there are the songs that don't do that. And I think that's good, not bad. And having that variety, remember, we're at the dawn of the advent of the album as a thing. This is probably one of the first albums, if you like, where, it's not 3 singles and then some other stuff, filler kind of thing. This is clearly an attempt to make an album, a proper album, which does, other things, showcases Eric, of course, but does other things besides that. So I'm giving it 8, not a skip.
Little Girl. Yeah, I think this is definitely the first male song on the record. Not to cover so far. I put down, I really enjoyed the guitar and vocal line in play start there. John Mayall is pushing himself vocally, but I think he gets the emotion right, which I'm okay with vocals in a sense where I think if the motive behind what they're singing is right, then I'm fine with that. I don't really have a problem with his voice. Really nice Hammond playing, and I did note that, like, Clapton, obviously he's off playing in a stellar sort of point in this song. Like he's off in his own little, for lack of better ways of putting it, he's off in his own little world. He's still part of the band, but he's really pushing himself as a guitarist on this to stand out. I think he was trying to prove a point, but there's a slight bit of arrogance there as well, because I don't think he wanted to be fitting in either. He wanted to stand out a little bit. So, I mean, all power to him. He obviously came from the Yardbirds. He was feeling a little bit maybe sheltered and couldn't push himself where he wanted to go. So, he did that, and he's playing out there on a different level. I picked up the song had a real Beatles vibe for me, and it resonates in a one or two things coming up as well. But I did pick up, it had a real little Beatles vibe to it. I gave it a 9 out of 10 on the record, a 9 out of 10. And I really enjoy the track, the feel of the song. But obviously, Eric's playing on this record is the standout for me. But the nice hammer playing as well. And I do like guitar and vocal line plays. So that was something that stood out to me in this track as well.
Sorry, Brad, carry on. Finish what you were saying.
Definitely not a skip. Definitely not a skip. It's a 9.
No. I'd just like to point out at this point that Eric Clapton is like 20 years old. I mean, you know, and I think I make this point a lot on this, on this show about the age of people when they are doing these things. I don't know how you approached it. For me, Mount Olympus of guitar playing on this, from Clapton, and he's like 20 years old. He's not like 25. He's not 40 or whatever. He's only been playing for what, 4 years, 5. He played a bit acoustic, but that the amount of time of clearly spent playing in that teenage years and learn and you're 20 years old and you're producing something of this maturity, this this understanding of the guitar, this understanding of blues, understanding of what you're playing, I think is astonishing, really. That part of that kind of creative thing that was going on then, kind of something in the air, something in the water, something in that area of where he was brought up, Richmond in London, and kind of with Beck and Page around that area as well.
I think Ramon made a good point when he was on live with us. He said, Clapton was an angry young man, and I think we got to remember that, he'd just not long found out, what his mother was. His mother, wasn't his mother. His guitar had been sat on. I think Brad mentioned that after Germany, watching the documentary, where he just turned into himself, and his experiences in a band that he thought was going to go somewhere in the Yardbirds, with those guys, sort of quite happy to push him out, and like a true artist, channeled it all through his guitar, and gave us a wonderful example of what you can do if you channel that effect of what's happening in your lives or your life in a positive way. But yes, certainly an angry man, certainly.
But it comes out in the fingers, doesn't it? It comes out in the emotion that you're playing. I mean, I always I put in that kind of category. I put Clapton and David Gilmour in the same thing. They're quite English. It's all kind of internalized. But man, you feel it in the fingers. When they play, that's when you feel it. And particularly this album is, Eric is clearly angry, clearly like, you're gonna have some, which befits his kind of reserved and kind of slightly aloof manner in this time period. So, I think it's really good. That he is able to articulate through his playing what his mental state is, where he is.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
So the next song, guys, is Another Man, and it's always a skip, and it's a 5 out of 10 for me. It's a traditional song that's been arranged by John Mayall, and I've spoken to harmonica players over the years, and it's not even a good example of something that a beginner blues harp player would necessarily learn from. So it's always a skip.
I have a theory about this, but maybe I'll keep it under my hat for a bit until we get further into it. But I thought it was just quite. I mean, because I say I don't remember the last time I listened to this album properly, kind of thing. So I think yes. I mean, I don't think it's particularly great. I think it's a, what's it about? It's about 1 minute 45, and that's probably it's one of its good points. That, but what it does, I think, is it introduces kind of a thing that says this is about Eric. We've had 3 tracks that are about Eric, but actually it's about a bit more than that, I think. And this is about introducing I talked about just now about making an album. So what you want an album is, this is a variety thing. This is like, you've had 3 tracks that are clearly, Eric's, the blueprint for Eric and all of that, and that's fine. That, really works. But you can't just spend the whole album doing, Hideaway over again. But some people might like that, but I don't think you can. I don't think an album is about that as an album. Therefore, you've got to do some other stuff. And I think that whilst I agree, Andrew, I wouldn't necessarily skip it, but I'm old school. I like to listen to an album from beginning to end, and I will endure the not very good track on the grounds that it's part of the the part of the album, and somebody's put it there for a reason. If they've got, and we've talked about programming on here quite a lot, where a particular song is and what it does, and it is for me, it's just 1 minute. It's a bit of relief, a bit of something completely different from what you've done before. And and I think you've got to have that on an album. You can't have a track after track that is like the first 3 tracks. Really, I think you've got to have something different. Whether it works as a song or whether it's great, I think is part of it for sure, but only part of it. And I think it's actually, I don't think I'd necessarily skip it, as I say, but I like to listen to an album all the way through, and I'm prepared to put up with the 1 minute 45. I'd probably cope, but I agree. I probably wouldn't give it more than a 5. But I'll give it 5, but I wouldn't buy it. Well, I wouldn't skip it. How's that? But again, I understand anybody who would. But I just think that all of a sudden you have an album where there's no Eric at all. I don't think he plays it at all. I couldn't. I listened to it to specifically going. There's no guitar on this at all. Not even a bit. I also think there's a bit of a thing about it's an attempt.
I think he's hand clapping.
Is he? Oh, hand clapping. So I think there's a bit of there's an attempt to kind of country blues authenticity here going on, which John is keen on. That's fine. So yes, 5. But I'm a bit of a it's got to be like for me to skip. So I'm giving it 5, but I wouldn't skip it.
Brad.
For me, look, it doesn't really resonate with me at all, but it's got that type of harmonica vibe, the hand claps, vocal and harmonica. It's a haunting sort of vocal. I mean, I'll give it that. I gave it a listen. I gave it 5 out of 10 as well. I would probably skip it in the context of if I wanted to. I'd rather skip it to get to the next track, if that makes sense. So it's a skip for me.
Hey, Great Vanzini.
Great Vanzini, how you doing? Welcome.
Yeah, well, look, if the previous song, if you've endured 1 minute 40 to wait to the next song, well done, anybody. And if you've skipped another man to get to the next song, well done too. So because the next song is Double Crossing Time, and it's a masterpiece. It's an extravaganza on the album. I know that Hideaway and maybe Stepping Out might get a lot of credit when people are talking about on the surface what's happening with the British blues boom in the 60s. And I'll point to these songs or these numbers deservedly so. But this is the song that nails it for me on the album. That Gibson Les Paul again it's just phenomenal. And with an AC30, if he had that AC30, he just would never get that sound. That's the amp that he was using 6 months before or a year before when he was in the Yardbirds. He would never get that sound. And as we probably already know, it's a thinly disguised attack on Jack Bruce, who was, in the band, that northern fellow from Scotland. He was in the band and kind of upset the guys because he decided to skip that band to go and chase some commercial dollars in Manfred Mann. So this is a song that I would put on a list for a Clapton essential. It would be in my top 10 of Clapton essential songs. 10 out of 10, and it's never a skip.
Okay. I agree. I think it's but we're back to where we should be on this album. Having had a little breather, and hey,
Clapton,
Alan, the stinging lead playing of Clapton is right and awesome. And the piano stuff as well. I think that has that kind of Chicago blues feel to it with the piano, and yeah. And I wrote down, it's all about what Clapton plays. And I think that's my summary of the track. I give it a 9, and definitely, it's one of the highlight tracks of the album for sure. So for me, really good. And you've got the tone, and he's, clearly, all that 20-year-old piss and vinegar and pissed off with Jack Bruce kind of thing. That comes out in the playing. Never a bad idea.
Brad?
All right. For me, I really like this song. It's Clapton male collaboration on it. I think they co-wrote this one together.
Yep.
Yeah, very piano-driven blues. I just, belting out vocals. I put down rich Les Paul sound once again. Like, it's got that tone that we've been sort of banging on about. But this one really highlights it. All the licks in this, in my opinion, all of Eric Clapton's licks are just class. They're just class. They're perfectly fitting for the song. When the solo kicks in, it's blistering hot. Like, I have to agree with you, Andrew. This is probably one of the highlights of the record. For the first 2 tracks, obviously the ones that are probably the ones that everyone would be driven to, because that's the go-to songs. But this would be the very next one for me to direct someone to, and I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely not a skip. I love the guitar playing in this track. And big Eric Clapton fan, obviously. So to hear him play, and it's one of those tones that he goes for that I wish he was still going for now. To be honest with you, at times I wish he sometimes would strap on a Les Paul, play through a blues breaker, and get that tone. As much as I love his strap tone, I miss him playing through a Les Paul and a Marshall.
Yeah.
What would he make of it now? Yes, absolutely.
And I'll say it again, you can still hear the signature licks that he does now in this record from 1966.
Yeah.
So he's still playing the same licks. Obviously, he refined them, and they're his own now. But that's a 9.5 for me. Definitely not a skip.
No, and I think that's right, isn't it? That he's never gone back to it, has he? To see what happens when he does play, and plug into that with a Les Paul.
Much to my, because I'm a Les Paul buff, and I love a good strap.
Are you a Marshall person as well, Brad? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, well, just a tad lean towards Marshall.
Sorry,
there's a nice comment.
Irresistible.
There's a nice comment in the chat from Alan, Dr. Alan Gerber. I should say that's his nickname, his formal title. So we're talking about the album, Alan, but you are absolutely correct. If you go on Spotify and check out the extended version of this album, there are some live versions of Clapton and John Mayall playing live, and holy cow, it sounds good. So check out the live versions. I've put a couple there. There's Telephone Road, Bernard Jenkins, and I think Alan's made reference to Stormy Monday, which is just fantastic. Check those out. So the next song is a Ray Charles number. I'm gonna move you back to Arkansas. What was it? Was that a political song? They were singing that at some Republican meetings in relation to Bill Clinton, because he was from Arkansas or something like that. You know?
No, it's much earlier than that. I think they did the classic thing with the band, and he ran out of material with 15 minutes to go. Ray Charles, apparently.
Yeah. Well, that's the joke. That's the joke amongst Republican circles. You know, that this was a song that they used to play. You know, to run. Anyway, this is not a political program. Look, I don't skip the song. I don't. It's a good example of British rhythm and blues happening at that time. You know, you've got a solid organ work going on there, and then you go into this weird drum solo, and I've never liked it, and I don't know why it's there, but I do, because they're replicating their set, so that's understandable. Is it the beginning of a concept album? I don't know. And then I think I think Brad made a point earlier about the Beatles. So if you guys get past the drum solo, if you endure that, you get a nice little Beatles riff coming through there, and that's where it began. That's where George and Eric Clapton probably started hitting it off, when they when he had to put that little riff in there from Day Tripper. 9 out of 10. It's 9 out of 10 because I think it's a good example of what's happening, even though I don't like the drum solo. Does that make sense?
Yes. Drum solos. Yeah, it does. Well, in contrast, I would skip this in a bloody heartbeat. There's one track I put in the bin, it would be this.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this typically, in that this song I have a real strong affinity with, because when I was a kid, 19, 20 and 25, we used to go to Bristol. There was a club in Bristol called the Western Star Domino Club, which is a fantastic. It was a domino club. It was basically a West Indian domino club. So the West Indian guys used to gather around and play dominoes. But they put on gigs and discos. And a friend of mine called John Stapleton, DJ from Bristol, used to do us like a 60s R&B disco, which was brilliant. And this was like the showcase, both sides of it, the showcase track of it. Right. And and I can remember dancing to this, and really loving it as a groove thing, as the way that Ray Charles does it. And so I don't remember hearing this before this week, I think, very much, but I put it on, and everything annoys me about it. Like, the organ is all wrong. He doesn't play it like Ray Charles plays it. And I was like, because I have this affinity with Ray Charles and Ray Charles's version, it's just like, yes, the drum solo, we could do without that, thanks. Yes, I took against it on the ground on many levels in a hilarious manner. And so I'll give it a 3 on the grounds I ought to give a score, but as I say, I like the Day Tripper reference at the end. I did get to the end and listen to the Day Tripper, which I quite liked. But yeah, not for Minot, because it's so. I understand why they would do it, by the way, and I understand why it's here. and as I say, I'll get into my theory. But for me, no, sorry, guys. 3, skip. Back to the drawing board. Learn to play it properly, John. I don't care about his singing, but I care about his playing this riff properly.
But before we get into Brad's summation, look, I totally agree with you, Simon. Even though I've given it a 9, I've given it a 9 in the context of what they're trying to achieve, because I don't want to be too critical. But I understand why you would give it a 3 and skip it, because it's there's not a lot redeeming about it even from a guitar playing point of view. So
yes.
What's Brad got?
I agree with you about. I agree with you about that. There is another context in which to look at it, and we'll come back to that. In which case, I understand what's going on here. As I say, apologies, Mr. Mayo.
No,
my bad. Anyway, Brad,
you've got to take into account in this day and age, especially like we were talking about songs earlier. These covers they're doing them their own way. So we've got to put that into perspective. Ray Charles' song is different, yes. Obviously, there's an organ vibe leading this one. I know it's not the same as the sort of Ray Charles vibe, but you've got to step outside of that a little bit, I think. The vocal, he's stretching his vocals in this one. Clapton kicks in and obviously takes control where the solo is, pulls it back. It's Clapton sort of brings that sort of song back for me a little bit.
That's right. There is a guitar solo in there. Sorry, Brad. Yeah, there is. I forgot. There is.
So busy lying down.
Sorry.
I've got to tip the hat to the bass player as well. I was playing pretty impressive. The drum breakdown, like that jazzy sort of thing I've put there, it was hit or miss for me, that part, but not taking away from the drummer, but I'm just not sure if it was fitting. But I understand that it's an expression thing, the way they're playing the song. Maybe that's how they did it live, so they're doing it that way. I really enjoyed the little Day Tripper reference there from Clapton on the return from the breakdown. I thought that redeemed a little bit. I haven't listened to this song for a long time, but look, I gave it a 7 out of 10 for effort, and there's some pretty impressive guitar playing in it as well. So this, I'm rating them in accordance with the 10s I've put in and the 5. And this record for me is very much, and for lack of better ways of putting it, about Eric Clapton for me. So
Yeah.
So,
I get it.
I'm putting guitars on the songs here. I'm rating them as a guitar player.
Yeah.
So, as someone who, an aspiring guitarist, that.
Yeah. Brad.
Ooh, Brad's frozen.
He's back.
You're back now. You're all right. You're back. That's fine.
Did you give it a ranking, Brad?
7.5 out of 10.
Okay. Well, the next song is Key to Love, and again, if you didn't think that Eric Clapton was the best thing on guitar in the UK at the time, this short little solo on this song clearly puts it up there. It's a remarkable little solo, completely different from, say, Double Crossing Time. Just a short, sharp burst. Again, that's something that he gets from Freddie King. Freddie King used to do those short little solos. Remarkable, because he could have gone on and done 5-10 minutes, or another 3 minutes, but just kept it simple. Lovely song, 9 out of 10, and it's never a skip.
No, Greg Vanzini makes a really good point about about drum solos were just starting to be a thing in rock circles, so they thought it was great. So Great Vanzini, that is a really good point about, you're right.
Oh,
they were
and that's just typical for Great Vanzini to bring that reference in, because it gives the bass player a opportunity to shine too, being a bass player himself. So where there's a drum solo, there's a bass player.
Ooh, look at that.
I'm joking, my friend.
But you see, now we get to side 2. Attacking the bass players again. We're going to get into trouble. It's for me, what I liked, I really like this track. I think it's a really good opener for side 2. It's the introduction of horns. So it's the first time we have horns, which I think go really well. I'd written down it's a kind of high-heeled sneakers rewrite a bit, but that's all right. Dang, 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 kind of thing. Which is really good. Great solo, stinging solo from Eric. I do love the idea that this is 2 minutes long. This song, you get into say it, get out, and we're not 3 years down the line when it's 15-minute guitar solos and songs and like that. I don't know whether Andrew, do you know when they stretched them out in concert? Did they do them?
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. So in effect, they did kind of self-edit these things. So it wasn't just they had a live sound, but the replication of the live sound didn't extend to we're going to do 10-minute versions of songs. We're going to keep them short and punchy. I think that's good, by the way. I think that's it's I love the horns. I thought that was a sort of a really cool thing to introduce on side 2. Something new, something different, with a different texture and a different vibe to it completely. Reminded me a bit of a kind of more of a soul review song than So again, a different type of song to do. So I give it a 9, and I wouldn't skip it. I think it's really good. Really liked it. Back on track.
Right. Key to Love. Very nice use of horns. I put that there. I won't go on too much about the things you've already touched on. Vocals on the edge of breaking up. I put that. That was something I thought he was very much on the edge all the time. Kind of like that. I kind of like that whole energy of just borderline ready to crack it, but you're hanging in there. The tone is tearing. Like from a guitarist point of view, it would melt the paint off the walls. It's a phenomenal tone on this, especially. I love the blistering dual note intro to the solo. And Clapton, it's like I keep saying, in here that every guitarist that wants to play blues rock, and this is a really perfect example as well. So I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, and it's a definite play, not a skip.
Yeah. I just want to make reference again to Dr. Alan Garber in the chat. That's probably going to be another show, Alan. Maybe next year we're going to do like the B-sides or some of the live songs, that some of these blues guys have done, because there's a lot of good stuff out there which isn't on these albums, which need to be discussed and talked about, which gives, I think, a different reflection on these albums. And Simon and I and Brad were just talking about it a couple of seconds ago. Some of the songs that they did, because people were dancing to them, went for 5-10 minutes. And the song on the record's only just under 3 minutes. So lots to discuss. Lots more shows in the future. And Alan, I know that you're a Clapton nut, so you're more than welcome to join us at any time. So just keep in touch with us and come on, and
that would be cool.
Would love to have you on, Alan. Okay, guys. So Parchment Farm. It's 5 out of 10 for me, and it's always a skip.
Is that it? That's a review. No, yeah, it's. What I looked up I looked up I don't know if you looked at the backstory. Parchment Farm was the Mississippi State Penitentiary that apparently it's quite an odd place, because apparently some of the inmates were turned into guards, and they were given guns. It seems entirely improbable in a prison that you had kind of hierarchies of prisoners, and some of them would be and it set out, while I liked, this is a complete aside, but it set out to make a profit. Made a profit of like $850,000 in 1918 or something. It was amazing. It sounds like a very odd place, but for me, again, this is kind of this is another one of those contrast pieces for me, where again, you've got to have something else besides just Eric doing that thing and doing that band thing. We've had a horn thing, now we got this kind of what I would describe as a sort of country blues thing, really, which I think I wouldn't skip. It's only a 5 for me, but I wouldn't skip it, I don't think, because I like the fact that it has a contrast in it to what came before and what comes after. And in terms of an ebb and flow of an album, I think that's, you've got to have those things, and you've got to have these kind of slightly more minor tracks. I think that I went and listened to the Mose Allison version of it as well and stuff like that, which interestingly has a piano riff rather like What I'd Say, which is not what you get off of this version, but it seems a bit more in that sort of territory. So I don't know if there's a line like that, or whether I'm making that up, but so. I quite enjoyed it as a as a thing, as a light song. So as I say, I'd give it 5, I think, but I wouldn't skip it, as I say, because I like it in the context of the album, really.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to give it too much time because we've already spoken about it long enough. I think it's
well done.
5 out of 10.
We'll keep you on.
There we are. 5 out of 10. Is it a skip or a play, Brad?
It's a skip.
I'm taking that as a skip.
I'm giving it a 5 because it's John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. That's why I'm giving it 5. But out of respect.
Look, no disrespect to John Mayall. We've paid homage to him at the top of the show, and he will always be endeared in our hearts for his contribution to music. He's a giant. He's a band leader. He's a genre setter. But you compare his harmonica playing to, I think Great Van Zeni's made a comment in here to Paul Butterfield. There's no comparison, is there? Paul Butterfield is just... You'd never skip Paul Butterfield playing.
You're flicking the old worm into the pond there, aren't you? See if you get a shark or two. Well done. You're on your own. You're on your own with that. The sound of Brad and I running away from that opinion as fast as our legs.
Okay, hold on, guys. I'm just flicking to my notes. Hold on.
That's fine.
Where are we? So we're up to... We've skipped Parchment Farm, so that's great. Always a skip. So, all right. So now we're getting probably to the good gravy. The good gravy. Yeah. Interesting that we've reviewed albums over the last couple of months, guys, where a lot of the good songs are at the beginning on a lot of albums, and we find 1 or 2 songs maybe towards the end. On this album, we've got 4 songs, and they're pretty good. The next 4 songs are pretty good, in my opinion. So, have you heard? Starts off slow and moody, which is great. Fantastic. And then you're getting that interplay between the guitar and the horns, which you guys have made mention about, which makes this album special. The horns makes it very special because they weren't playing with the horns live. So the fact that they had the the idea to bring that in, to beef up the sound, to give it something, another dimension's a masterful approach. Eric's solo comes in at 3:25, and without doubt one of the best solos ever on tape. It's a masterpiece, and it's never a skip. And I just want to repeat what Brad and Simon have said earlier. It's a wonderful example for any blues guitar player, whether you're 15 or 55 or 65. It's something worth trying to learn or play along to. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I love the kind of urbane, smoky, late-night blues feel to the start of it with the horns and things. I like the fact it's a 6/8 time, isn't it? It's a waltz. So it's that's really cool, because that's a different time signature we've had before, and gives it a different vibe. I like the call and response, the guitar and Mayo doing the call and response stuff in it as well. That's really cool. And as you say, that piercingly emotional guitar solo at the end from Eric is right up there. Wow. Doing what he should do. And some cool organ playing as well. Let's not forget the cool organ playing. That, as I said, when you play it loud, it has that organ provides a proper bedrock on which in a sense, not having a rhythm guitar player, that's what the organ is doing. That's what John Mayall's organ is doing that rhythm, and providing a kind of that sound spread that fills in those things, so that Eric can leap off and blast away, kind of thing, without it, the band saying, all about the band playing live and being able to have quite a full sound with only like a 4-piece. That organ needs to do a lot of work, unsung work, but it needs to be in there, filling in all those gaps, because those are gaps to be filled, especially if you're playing live. It's a 9 out of 10 for me, and not a skip. You'll be surprised to know. So yeah, loved it. Yeah, it's a great track.
Have you heard? I've just not going to try and touch too much more on what you guys have already done, but I like the mellow ride drums, like on the ride. I like that feel. Blues turnaround with the saxophone, and the guitars sparse but very tasteful, vibey licks throughout. And like Andrew sort of said, you can hear some textbook Clapton licks here that he still uses today. I love the solo. It's just blast of Les Paul goodness, in my opinion. It's just one of those songs.
Nicely put. A blast of Les Paul goodness.
And I gave it an 8 out of 10 in the context of everything else that I've rated, and it's definite play.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I would have thought you would have given that a higher mark, Brad, but no, I'll take your 8. The next song, Rambling on My Mind. Look, I got to tell you guys, when I first heard this song, I didn't pay much attention to it, but about 15 years ago, when I started consciously applying my spare time to being a student of the British blues, the song excited me. I loved it. There was something in this vocal performance, and this is before I knew anything about, the in-depth details of what Clapton had. We had an idea what was going on 15 years ago. His biography hadn't come out, and we didn't have a lot of, good articles out there giving us a bit of a understanding. But I didn't sense in the vocals someone being shy or someone's first attempt at a vocal. And even now when I listen to the vocals, it's a bit hair-raising for me, because I can hear some vulnerability there, and I think that's the key that we get with Clapton, and Simon, you mentioned it earlier, he's only 20 years old, barely out of being a teenager. He made everyone go home so he could record this, he was happy to play his guitar, his singing he was a little bit shy about, but it just reflects, I think, the depth of who Eric Clapton is as an artist for me. This song is breathtaking. I love it. I love the guitaring. It's just simple. He pays homage, doesn't he, guys, to one of his heroes, his all-time heroes, Robert Johnson. If it wasn't for Eric Clapton and this song, millions of people probably would never be listening to Robert Johnson, so we give him credit for that. I love the song. It's never a skip. And I'll pass it over to you guys.
You're not going to give it a score?
Oh, 10 out of 10. Yeah.
4. Yes.
Yeah. No. 10 out of 10. I can't. I love it. Cool. Love it.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. I mean, it clearly is a tribute to Robert Johnson and stuff, and that's interesting. And obviously, I did pick up. Interestingly, I did pick up that thing when I listened to it a couple of times. That I thought to myself, I felt, and I don't know if this is true, I felt Eric's not very used to singing and playing right now, is he? I felt there was that underlying thing about he's playing the guitar quite simply. Some of that is because that's the song, but I felt that some of it was a bit, and I felt a couple of times I heard some little kind of skippy bits when you went, I don't know if Eric's actually that used to singing and playing, which is fine. He's 20 years old. It's practically, it's kind of, you've got to do at some point, you've got to step off and do it and, not worry about it. So I think it has, tremendous vibe to it. Clearly, Eric loves this song, loves doing it. And I noticed there seemed to be some 2 guitars as well. So more overdub guitars on it. I could hear definitely more than one. And one of the guitars clearly in rhythm mode, and then kind of with the piano providing the coloration really for a lot of it. Which, and as I say, I wrote down, can Eric sing and play at the same time? I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Of course he can, but I did feel there was. You're right. There was a sort of vulnerability between the two things right now. Where he is in this thing, but. Yes, it's a beautiful version, and clearly, Clapton loves it, and I presume, that that's just another thing they wanted to do was, bring a Robert Johnson track, one of his heroes, to the album. So I too am giving it a 10 and never a skip. So it's a great version, really good version of it.
Well, you guys have covered off a lot of the notes that I had.
Sorry, it's the price of being third, isn't it?
It's a bugger when you got to go third, eh?
It's good in the sense that we're all on the same page a little bit here, because I'll personalise it a little bit for myself. I don't know if anyone in here knows, but I do my own songs and I write songs and I put my vocals down. And I wish when I was 20 that I started singing like Clapton did. So he's put himself in a position of vulnerability. He's thrown himself out there, and he did it. And he covered one of his heroes' songs in his way. There's a lot of purity to it. I can hear in his voice the shyness, but I can hear the excitement behind the fact that he's actually going to be doing something like that. So, his voice, I call me silly or not, but I kind of related myself like I wish, when I was 20, I had given singing a go because I didn't have the confidence to do it. So, in a sense, that's probably why I rate the song the way I do. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I didn't give it 10 because I just thought, like, say, for example, some of the other tracks that I've given 10 on this deserve that 0.5% more.
I think it's a good point, isn't it? You're given the chance to do something, and you get on with it and do it, and in a sense, I want to do this. I want and not worry too much about because it's a step, isn't it? It's always the next step.
Well, there is a sense of like there's a guitar player first and there's a vocalist second. You're comfortable as a guitarist because you know what you can do, but singing is a lot more personal. And for someone like myself that I'm not the most comfortable person singing. So I do it. I'm getting better and more comfortable with it. But I can relate that to probably what Eric was doing at this particular time in his career. And obviously we know him now as being a phenomenal singer, a blues singer. He's channeled his heroes, but he's forged his own voice and he's forged his own career and he's forged it. Like, this was a pivotal point for him to forge forward to become the Eric Clapton that we know today.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's and as I say, that could I just say that your first singing song is a Robert Johnson song. I mean, how, it's like, that's not going easy on yourself, is it? By a distance, I don't think. I don't. Robert Johnson would have been pretty obscure in the mid '60s, but nevertheless, if he's one of the giants of blues, Robert Johnson, isn't he? And to pick out a song that that one of the giants of blues has done and try and do it, and I think that speaks of a man with ambition.
Well, he set the benchmark, didn't he, for Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones? 2 years later on Beggars Banquet, and not Beggars Banquet. Is it Let It Bleed or Beggars Banquet that they do?
Love in Vain.
Love in Vain. What album's that on? I'm having a mental block here.
Beggars Banquet, isn't it?
Beggars Banquet. Yeah. So again, another groundbreaking move by Eric Clapton. And again, we've got to give him credit here. We've discussed this before, haven't we, guys, on this show? Eric Clapton, from the word go, never hid his influences. Always said right from the word go, this is who I'm listening to. This is who influences me. Go and listen to these guys. So all credit.
No, it's on Let It Bleed. I lied. It's on
Let It Bleed. Yeah, Let It Bleed. Yeah, sorry. I got all these bloody albums in my mind, guys. But yeah. So phenomenal. So the next song is Stepping Out, and wow. That horn interplay between the guitar, and I have to tell you guys, when this is the song, this is the number that got me into Eric Clapton and the Blues Breakers. I thought I knew Eric Clapton, I knew the 70s Eric Clapton, and I knew the 80s Eric Clapton and the 90s Eric Clapton, and I knew a bit of Cream. But to be fair, I didn't really know a lot about, this album with blues, with the Blues Breaker. No one was listening to it in my circle of Clapton friends. But I heard this song, and I couldn't believe it was Eric Clapton. It just blew me away. I couldn't believe that he was playing this song when he was 20. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think they had this technology in 1966, to do this. I remember thinking that because I was a Beatles nut, and I was always comparing stuff to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones back, in that period, and they weren't getting this kind of tone. So that's where I first discovered this album and this period of Eric Clapton. So it's always got a special attachment to me. It's always a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip. And there's other versions that other guys have done, and they're all good. Never a skip.
Yeah. Andrew, just sort of academic, do we know whether this album had an influence on the Rolling Stones, on Keith and Brian Jones? Do we know?
Yeah. Keith talks about it. It was. So this album got to number 6. So it's an interesting album because and that's why we started doing this show, Simon. This whole idea of this British blues boom going on, where this obscure music for a short period of time was like really popular in the UK for 3 years. It was dominant. Fleetwood Mac outsold the Rolling Stones and the Beatles in 1969. Holy cow!
Yeah. Yes, the blues boom, the British blues boom, absolutely was actually a boom. Yeah, it's
but yeah. Keith Richards talks about this album.
Yeah. I too, I love this. I love that kind of the interplay between the horns and Eric, going back and forth and stuff. And I like the fact that they all kind of do a solo. Don't they? There's an organ solo, a horn solo, and a guitar solo. Everyone's, you can see that this is the song where you stretch out and you can, and everybody does a bit kind of thing. And so, ripping playing again from Eric, completely, tearing it up as a thing. Yeah. So I have one other thing. I have a big theory about this album, but big reveal but I'm going to keep it under my hat for another song. So it's a 9 out of 10 for me, and never a skip. Absolutely.
Stepping out,
and all in 2 minutes 30. Sorry, Brad. All in 2 minutes 30 as well. So it's really cool.
So Stepping Out for me, it's probably one of my favorites on the record. The guitar playing, I mean, I absolutely love it. The licks, he really digs in. I love his use of vibrato. Clapton, for me, his vibrato is probably one of the best ever was and never is. I mean, he's still current, so his vibrato is phenomenal. The horns, the band's cooking. I won't go over too much ground that you guys have already covered, but I gave it a 10 out of 10. And like I said at the start of this, probably one of my favourites on the record. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah. Who's this Brad Cook in the chat?
Late arrival. Dear.
Look.
I'm waiting to
sorry,
get time.
Mate.
I'm waiting to get time up.
Okay, so after a blistering, and I think that's a great point, Simon, that you mentioned the song duration, because it's one of those songs that you listen to that it doesn't seem like it's a short song. It's one of it's an interesting song. It doesn't seem to, I would never have thought that it would have been that short. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so we're up to the last song on a landmark album, and it's really pleasing, guys, to see that we've all been honest with our ratings and our opinions on the songs, because it is an interesting album, and it has a status in rock and roll history for a couple of reasons, and well deservedly so. It ain't right. So, you've got a boogie woogie style going on there, which is, probably a song from their set that they played. We've got to remember that the British blues boom was about singing and dancing and, buying beers if they were at a gig somewhere. You've got Eric Clapton playing rhythm guitar, which is interesting. No solo. So, he could have put a solo in. Who knows? Maybe when they played the song live, it had a solo. But, interesting song choice for the last song. I know that we like to talk about last songs and beginning songs on albums, because it's an important, exclamation mark or parenthesis of where the album's going. So I would have finished the song with Stepping Out. Interesting that they ended the song with this song. 8 out of 10. And I don't skip it. Just a good example of, Clapton's rhythm playing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I like the sort of chugging rhythm with the harp playing. It's a very much a harp song, harp solo, the old harmonica stuff, and Eric plays rhythm guitar. So for me it's an 8 out of 10 and not a skip. No, I think it's as I say, I have one more thing to say about it, but I'm going to hold it. So for me, it's a cool song. I liked it. It's good.
Ain't It Right? Shuffle. Harmonica leads the song. 6 out of 10 for me. Borderline skip.
Yeah.
The record should have ended on Stepping Out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
On a strong note.
There's always a kind of coda song. Have you noticed that in all these albums we were doing recently, there's always been like the coda song that seems to come after, the really strong one, which is, I guess, programming.
Yeah, no, I would have probably, if I was structuring this album, I would have ended with Stepping Out.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, reasonable. Yeah, completely.
That's the record, isn't it?
Yeah, I do appreciate you guys' honesty on the album because, I've made comments, Brad, on previous shows that I wish that I could have this album without the vocals, because
I don't feel that.
It's an acquired taste. Some of those harmonica songs are, average. But, in the context, though, of that British blues boom, you got to remember there are 16-year-old and 17-year-olds buying this album, and they would have loved those. They were devouring this album, and they would have been given this album 12.5 out of 10, the way, because it got to number 6, so clearly people were buying it. Interesting fact, though, that that Clapton never paid much attention to this album until about 40 years later, when it came to him writing his biography, when he was doing a bit of research and found out, holy shit, everyone was saying that this album was monumental. And he was going, really? It was just some album.
That's interesting, yeah.
Wow. It's his career path, that's why. To him, it's not, you earlier recording artists you probably don't go back and listen to because you surpassed that. But for a lot of people, it's monumental. So that in its sense. I don't know if you guys have spoken about it in the past, and you touched on the Marshall, but the Les Paul as well that got stolen. This guitar got stolen apparently, didn't it? And it was spoken toward to be a 1960 Les Paul burst, but apparently Joe Records has located it in a private collection, and it's at 59.
I'm going to put a link on this show, Brad, and I'll flick you a link. There's a guy called Ramon that we've had on this channel. He's got a channel called The Guitar Show, and he's got a guy that they do some programs together. And anyway, they've done a video where they think they've found Clapton's Les Paul in the UK. And the evidence that they give to back up their theory is pretty strong.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll flick you that link. Yeah. And then if we play our cards right next year, I've done a reach out to Ramon, and Ramon is happy to come on and discuss that with us, but he's busy. So this is something that we're going to do probably late January, February. So it'll be interesting to talk about those theories, because I think that guitar is somewhere. Someone's got it. Someone who stole that guitar knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I read a few things today about that guitar in particular, and I did read that Joe Bonamassa reckons he knows where it is. It's in a private collection.
East Coast America,
and it was a 59 Les Paul, not a 60, because the dates go back to 59, not 1960. But it's a landmark Les Paul, so it's probably worth a house or two. So if someone wants to come
a couple of houses in Manhattan, I'd say a couple of those kind of houses, mate. Not a couple of houses in Forest Lake, Hamilton.
You buy the whole of Hamilton for that. That's rude, isn't it? That's rude. yeah. And we know the man who'll sell it to you, don't we?
Look, if Greenie's Les Paul went for $2 million to Kurt, this one's got to be worth at least $3 or $4 million. Yeah. Someone's going to pay that.
I mean, and this album spawned, like we said at the start, like guys like Peter Green, Page, all of them really did learn a lot from this record, and that's all from so
yeah. So, Andrew, you touched on this. I have a sort of theory, but I've formulated my own theories about it. I haven't seen it anywhere else, but that my feeling about this album, what makes it so brilliant in a sense, and much more than the sum of the individual songs, is that you said it earlier that you said it's the beginning of a concept album, and it had occurred to me when I looked at this album that it seemed to me that what they were trying to do here was showcase a whole lot of different blues artists and different blues genres. So you've got the sort of the Chicago blues with Little Walter. You've got the like country blues, Robert Johnson blues. You know, obviously he's a particular artist. You've got Parchment Farm, which is like a sort of country blues thing. Very sort of you've got almost a sort of the Another Man thing, which is just harmonica and singing, which is again another kind of very sort of plain almost. I wonder if they had a kind of concept where they said we're going to, they picked the songs and picked what they were going to do, and said we're going to do all these different things, and basically what we're going to do is showcase the different types of American blues with particular artists. So you've got obviously Eric Clapton, and they went through John Mayall's, because Eric Clapton lived with John Mayall for 6 months, didn't he? And went through his record collection, his vast record collection of stuff. My feeling is that's what they're trying to do here. They've got like the sort of live at the Regal type things with the horn section on them. You've got an R&B thing with What I'd Say, and things like that. And so clearly it says to me that one of the things that they're doing is that showcase of a whole different genres of blues, different artists and all sorts of things, and so in a sense, for me, there is a kind of concept behind the album that makes it more than the individual sum of its parts, if you like. Does that ring any bells with you? Does that?
Yep.
I'm sure people have said that before me, but I can't believe I appeared out of nowhere with this. But that's what occurred to me. That's what I said, and in a sense, that influences some of what some of the more minor things like Parchment Blues and stuff like that. That. It is of a song of itself, not of great interest. But in terms of what it's trying to showcase in 1965, if you're like Mr. Curator, like John Mayall clearly is, and you want to showcase then you're going to do Parchment Farm because it showcases something that the rest of the album doesn't. It's not very long, but it showcases something, a particular type of thing that, an old Booker White song kind of thing that is about, just has harmonica and a singing piece. And it's if you go back to those old country blues things, where people did stuff with just harmonicas and, bashing their feet on the floor and kind of, to keep rhythm and things, that, for me, clearly that there is that overarching thing about it that with different genres and stuff, and in that sense, I think it succeeds beyond succeeding, really.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't read his biography, he says that, Simon, in his biography. He says that that it was like a religious experience for them to, and that's what they were trying to do, because their song set was 30 to 40 songs. So the hardest thing that he had to do was go through and pick the songs, that they were going to record. But he makes that point very clearly that you just said. It was about him. And this is long before political correctness. This is, the mid-1960s, where I think a lot of musicians today get attacked by certain people for whatever reason. But, in the 1960s, you had established white musicians who understood exactly where the music was coming from and paid respects to it and wanted to get that across. Keith Richards and Mick Jagger talk about that themselves many, many times. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant too. you know. Yeah.
But I guess this is
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Was the first.
And I think that is one of the things that makes this such an important record. Brad's touched on the other thing, which is the Clapton sound. That Les Paul Marshall, absolutely, Brad. That's the other thing that singles it out. You're all sadly wrong. Thank you, Greg Vanzini.
But the reason why Great Vanzini is saying this is because he went to the record shop to buy this album. You know, Great Vanzini was a young guy. You know, we had him on a show, didn't we, Simon? And he told us, you know, that this album, this is what, you know, his friends were listening to in 1966. You know, this album was, Brad, his balance. You know, you know, it was something that they you know. So I can understand why he's saying that we're all dickheads, because we've not given him tens and we've skipped songs.
I only skip one, and that's because I'm an idiot. But you know,
okay,
what I'd say,
okay.
You know, I can't get past the affinity I've got with the original to but but you see clearly, you know, my opinion is just my opinion, but you know what by them doing that is a different kind of song than the songs on the rest of this album. It's a kind of R&B, you know, well, I mean, you know, it's a dance number really, but you know, Ray Charles is, you know, that's another artist. We're showcasing another artist. We're doing one of his songs. We're, you know, doing it our own way. Brad, I'll take your point about it. I think that's a, you know, good point about you cover them your way and they become yours. But you know, that is why clearly it should be on this record, because it does a thing, it does a job. You know, it showcases another artist, showcases another type of song, you know, that is not on, you know, it's a different type of R&B blues than the rest of the album has. And therefore, if you're going to look at it in terms of it showcasing that and then putting it together with all these different artists and these different styles of blues and all these things, and if you're going to do that, then it absolutely has its place on this record. And I completely defend that. You know, the fact that I can't get on with it is entirely my bad and my idiotic stupidity. But, you know, in terms of my intellectual understanding, I understand why it should be on this record, clearly, and what it does. Yeah?
Awesome.
I want to make that clear. Okay, Great Vanzini, that's me getting out of it. It's like... But clearly that is what I think about it, is that it should be on here, and my opinion doesn't count, because that's not about the whole thing, and I'm really interested by that.
No, I appreciate that. So if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, if anyone's watching and has managed to get to 1 minute 52 towards the end and you've forgotten to hit that subscribe button, that's really important for our channel. We do. I have to make it quite clear. We'd love to get 1,000 subscribers. It will just make things a little bit easier for the channel. If you haven't subscribed to Brad's YouTube channel, you can do that now, because he is in the chat. But also check out his website, and I'll just put that up there, because he will always appreciate the fact that people can jump over there and support him. Check out Brad's live music. We do appreciate Brad joining us, because he gives us, you know, that musician's perspective to a lot of the things that we talk about. Having Simon and I clearly are guitar players, but having Brad's perspective, and I'm sure everyone in the chat appreciates that too. And you know, again, if I could pay you guys for the time that you've given, because I know that it's especially when you're doing 2 shows in a weekend, that's a bit of time. So if my thanks is anything to you guys, that's all I can give you. That's all I can give you is my thanks.
All I can say is it says nothing to the money.
Yeah. Okay, show me the money.
Show me the money. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
Hey,
Nelson.
Good morning to Nelson Rodriguez. Good morning, Nelson. Hope you're good. Thanks for joining. It's yes.
What's the album next week, Simon? You got an album for us?
I haven't thought about next week. I haven't thought about next week.
Okay, so what you want to do then is if you can think about an album and give it to me, and I'll put an update on the channel.
Okay.
Yeah. So that we can give it a bit of homework. We'll be on next Sunday, usual time, guys. If that's okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and I'll think about what album we're going to do. My fifth one.
Elaborate on what Andrew said. If everyone can subscribe to the channel, it certainly does help. So, I'll throw my 2 cents worth in now. I think it's a great opportunity to embrace the channel. It's growing, so let's keep it growing and keep the content where it is at the moment. And thanks to Andrew for having me on again.
No, I appreciate it. Good, and you'll be doing you after next Sunday, depending on what's happening. The next Sunday show is your album. So if you haven't already picked an album or got something in mind, you need to have it for next week. Okay.
I've got something.
Yeah. But and look, if there's any suggestions from you guys in the chat, throw some suggestions. If you've got some British Electric Blues albums, from the period that we're talking about, throw them our way, and me and my co-hosts will consider them. We've got a couple of exciting things going. Brad's going to try and get Dropkick Blues on. And I know it's that silly season, but we've got a Stevie Ray Vaughan show coming up for all you Stevie Ray Vaughan nuts out there, so that'll be cool. We've got the 5150 show fortnightly, and we've got the weekly Sunday show. So, lots to look forward to.
Yeah. Subscribe. Make sure you don't miss anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would just say goodbye to people in the chat. Thanks to Arvin and Sonia for so Jesus Rapes Me wants to know, Brad, where Clapton is on your list of guitarists.
He'd be within top 5.
Top 5. There we are. Top 5. So thanks to Jesus Rapes Me.
Brad gets another invite back then. Because if he wasn't in his top 5, he'd be bang. Where did Brad go? Where's Brad?
Like a stone.
Yeah, gone, deleted.
Oh dear. Anyway, so thanks to Nelson Rodriguez.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Finished. Oh dear. Because we're so like that, Brad. Haven't you noticed? Sorry. So thanks to Nelson Rodriguez, Ellen Forrestine. Thank you, Ellen, for joining. Great Vanzini, of course. Great Vanzini, and some bloke called Brad Cook. We didn't have Kubrick Lover. I don't know. Hope he's probably gone to sleep. Hope he's all right.
Yeah.
Yes. So Kubrick Lover, we are thinking of you. Yeah. So thanks all for joining. It's been another really enjoyed the show, and another really good album we've talked about. Yeah, and it won't be the last time that we'll be talking about this album, guys. As we get more and more information, it'll be interesting to see what happens on this new Peter Green biography, guys, because apparently, there's a big chunk of information around that Blues Breaker period leading up to Peter Green joining the Blues Breakers, and there's a lot of gear talk in there too, so that's probably going to clear a few things or add fuel to the fire. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, do you see Sonia? Do you see Sonia's setting us what can only be described as a challenge, which is, can you do Captain Beefheart's Trout Marsh replica? No. There's an album. I don't know if you've ever heard it. Have you ever heard it?
Yes.
Ever heard it?
No, we're not.
Astonishing record.
Yeah.
I don't know blues. I don't know about that, but
no,
not British.
Yes, that's That's Sonia taking us left field.
Yeah, Sonia.
She knows exactly what she's doing.
That kid, that is a challenge. Yeah. Have you heard it, Brad? If you know it, Trackmaster Replica.
Hey?
Do you know Trackmaster Replica?
No, I have not listened. So Sonia,
go and check it out. It's on Spotify.
Yeah.
And if you come back in one piece next week, fully functional,
we'll know you passed the test. Yes. Just saying. Trackmaster Replica. The word "test" is the key word in that. Yeah, it's a test. It'll be a test. Yeah,
but I think if you're going to nominate an obscure album like that, then you need to come on the show to be part of the Skip or Play.
Yes.
Ooh, good point. Good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, we might have to keep that one. Keep that one up our sleeves for Sonia for next year. That's interesting. Yeah, and we appreciate that. But if you guys want to keep tuned to the channel when Simon flicks us what the album's going to be, I'll do a quick update on the channel so that you guys can do get all your homework done and join us next week.
I'll have a look and decide later. Apologies.
Okay.
No. Take care, all. Stay safe for another week. We'll see you next week. Yeah. Have a good week, all. Take care. Bye.